Hello, everybody. I'm Jordan Stempelman. For those of you who have not been to a Common Sense reading before, I'm really excited to feature tonight's readers, Izzy Casey and Ashley M. Jones. It's a reading I've been waiting for a number of months now. For those of you who are attending for the first time, I started this series in Kansas City, Missouri 12 years ago. All the readings this spring will be virtual, but in the fall and the spring of 23, I will move to a hybrid format where half the readings will be in person at the Kansas City Art Institute's campus gallery, and the other half will remain remote. Next month's reading will feature Simone Savannah and Brandon Shimoda, and that'll be on March 5th at 7 p.m. If you're interested in attending that reading, check out my website. I will post a notice for that there soon, probably in the next week, hopefully. And so you can register for the reading there. I've also archived past readings at my website, so you can go there as well and see readings from dynamite poets there as well. And sometime in the next few days, this reading will appear there too. I also want to mention that this event was made possible by generous contributions from the Creative Writing Program at the Kansas City Art Institute. And before I introduce tonight's readers, please feel free to use the reaction emojis at any point in time during the readings and participate in the chat. Feel free to post any questions you may have while listening to the readers or after listening to the readers, because we will have a Q&A for about 15-20 minutes after the reading. So I encourage you all to filter questions in the chat, and I will retrieve them and answer those or I will ask those for the writers. All right, let's get started. So our first reader tonight is Izzy Casey. Izzy is a writer and editor based in New York City. Her work has been published in or is forthcoming from Gulf Coast, Black Warrior Review, Bennington Review, Boat, the Columbia Review, the Yale Review, Bat City Review, and elsewhere. She received her MFA in poetry from the Iowa Writers Workshop, where she was the recipient of a fellowship with the Poetry Foundation. And I'm just really excited to welcome her tonight. I read some of her poems, I believe, in Bennington Review and also in Black Warrior. And I'm just really excited to welcome Izzy Casey tonight. Izzy.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Okay, so the first poem I'm going to read, I wrote in a dog park, and it's called King Midas. Oh. Is my Zoom? Oh, I'm not muted. People. Okay, sorry. Okay. It's called King Midas. Everything I touch turns into a golden retriever. Some call it the dog touch me not. Others call it the woof woof. I prefer the former. It has a maverick ring to it. There are many kinds of maverick. There are many kinds of dogs. Dogs that once were toothbrushes. Dogs that once were dishwashers, sea devils and oranges. Once I ran headfirst into a warrior. He became a dog warrior. The dog warrior ran right back into me and became two dogs. Once I clapped for a dog and a dog fell out. Once I wept so hard into the washcloth and found a dog against my face. I thought the touch would go away, but it didn't. I thought I'd never meet my father, but I did. I met him in an airport. The airport turned into a dog who wagged its tail at me. The plane took off with me inside it and became a dog that fell from the sky. Each tiny little strand of golden hair, a tiny little golden dog. Once I didn't eat anything for days. I refused to open my mouth for the dog to enter. Once I pulled a dead hair from my head. I pulled a dead dog from my head. How awful it is to become attached to a thing that is living. My father is a dog. My house is a dog. I have never touched my mother. What a monster I am. Time is a dog. Romance is the ugly dog that the car hits. Eating disorder is a dog that drags me by the collar. Rows and rows of flowers become roses and roses of dogs. I move through empty space. Every dog becomes a blur. Every nicey nice. Every wake up time. There is a howling and I am somewhere in it. It is sabotage alone that I confuse for love. This next poem is called Fresh Bread. My mother shoves her head inside the stove and I cry out, please don't. Without fresh bread, we'll starve. And this one is called No Appreciation for the Work of the Hand. I have this hammer. Once it was a hammer. Now it is a hammer for sale. A hammer so good it distracts from the fact that it is even a hammer in the first place. A hammer so good it is incapable of birth. No one will betray it. It does not speak French. It won't even try to learn. I like to beat people with it. I like to beat myself. And I beat long nails into the wall and leave them there. I do. Nobody wants to talk about birds, but they'll talk about a hammer. But birds are the hammers of the sky. I have not smashed a bird with my hammer, though the sensation that I should never leaves me. When my father left me, he left me with this hammer. All I could do was beat myself with it. It didn't change a thing. I hit the hammer with another hammer in hopes it would become less of a hammer. I hit the other hammer with my hammer. It shattered into 16 pieces. I counted. I ate the 16 pieces of the hammer over the course of 7 days. I tried to make the hammer less of a hammer and it becomes more of a hammer. I tried to make the hammer more of a hammer and it becomes more of a hammer too. When I left my mother, she left a hammer on my doorstep, a different one. I vowed not to beat myself with it, or anyone for that matter. I fear I am changing into what has changed me. Every morning, I still wake up. I say, I am awake, finally awake. When am I going to die? A hammer should be used for hitting and not throwing. A day I wake up is just a day I go back to sleep. That is a problem. Big, jumbo, wumbo problem. Colossal. Go ahead, record me. I'll say it again. Big, jumbo, wumbo. But only if you take my hammer. There are no recordings of me with the hammer when I am young, because I have never been young. Please take this hammer away from me. It isn't wise to carry around a hammer while you cry and cry and cry. Nobody lends you mascara or invites you along to the rodeo. I want to go to the rodeo, pet the bull, even if it is mechanical. I know no one is watching me, but I feel everyone watching me. I never feel I am not standing in the corner of the room. And this next one is a lipogram, and it's a poetic constraint where essentially the only vowels, each word in the poem only has the vowel letter I. And it's called I'm Piss Witch. Hi, I kill lil fish with this stick. Swish, hit it, right in its mind, stirring in its its. I'm with child in this tiny pink bikini. I'm Mississippi's kid. Birth, it is bliss. It is wind. Climate, hi, hi, I'm by. I'm hiding in this lint bin with this stick, sniffing it. Lil stick, it stinks. It is shrimp. Is it shrimp? It is shrimp, I think. Ships sink, blimps thin, lights dim, virgin sin, shrink snitch, clinics fib. I drink milk with gin. I sip fig chili. Fig chili is bright. Limp. I tilt Dick's lid. I lick Bill ill. Dignity stinks. I lick Bill ill. Ribbit. Hiss. I'm girl with girth. I'm sick with thrills. I tip in pills. I'm fit with infirmity. I slit wrists. I dip chips in dip. I mimic victims. I inhibit will. I'm civil ink. I'm instincts bib. I'm critic chic. I'm shining. I'm big, bird's twin. I wish I'm skinny. If I'm diminishing, it is in this mind I'm in. And this one is called Ha Ha. When I was a little girl, I was a real brat / stink. I excluded people with short hair from jump rope, told them that if they still sucked their mother's boobies and cried themselves to sleep at night, then they couldn't be my friends. My mother liked me. My father didn't. Ha ha. My father was also a real brat / stink. When I was born, he wanted to ditch me and run away to Thailand. And so he did. Ha ha. When I was a little girl, I was a real screamer / nag. In preschool, a boy was playing checkers. I said, "Stop playing checkers the wrong way, Robert." He punched me in the nose. Ha ha, I deserved it. I was also terrified of the Sandman. To get me to bed, my mother told me that the song Mr. Sandman summoned him, so she would sing it at me. And the thought of him and his gold body, I thought he had a gold body, standing over my bed, made me never want to open my eyes again. I didn't like to be looked at. I guess I wasn't used to male attention. Ha ha, back then. I would hide until I fell asleep. It worked every time, but he never came. Neither did my dad. Ha ha. But then I met him in the Greater Binghamton Airport. The Greater Binghamton Airport is a great place to meet your dad for the first time. It has a 3.5-star rating on Yelp. It is the scariest airport that Dana B. from Cincinnati, Ohio, has ever been to because of the foggy weather with the rain / snow mix. When I first met my father, I knew it had to be him because I thought it had to be me. We looked the same. Weird. He asked if I had a boyfriend, what my favorite color was, told me there must be 100 little hymns running around Thailand. I became really close to jumping on top of the baggage claim and causing a big scene. He apologized, turned to me, said, "Why I am doing this now, why I didn't reach out to you a year ago or two." He paused and then said, "Or 17, I don't know." I laughed at that part. Ha ha. But he wanted to give me $1,000, visit me in LA, and teach me how to drive a car. But he never came to see me. My father has never seen me. His eyes are sealed shut. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you so much, Izzy. That was a great reading. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Let me. All right. Our next reader. Oh, I know what I need to do here. You see, this is why I told you I should never be a Zoom host by any means. I should never be. I need help. All right. Our second reader is Ashley M. Jones. Ashley is a poet laureate of the state of Alabama, and just started in 2022 and will be appointed until 2026. She holds an MFA in poetry from Florida International University. She is the author of Magic City Gospel from Hub City Press in 2017, Dark Thing, Pleiades Press in 2019, and the phenomenal Reparations Now, which just came out in 2021. If you haven't checked it out yet, please do. It's just a dynamite book. Her poetry has earned several awards, including the Rona Jaffe Foundation Writers Award, the silver medal in the Independent Publishers Book Awards, the Lena Miles Weaver Todd Prize for Poetry, a literature fellowship from the Alabama State Council on the Arts, the Lucille Clifton Poetry Prize, and the Lucille Clifton Legacy Award. And she was a finalist for the Ruth Lilly Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Fellowship in 2020. Her poems and essays appear or forthcoming in CNN, Poetry Magazine, the Oxford American, Origins Journal, The Quarry by Split This Rock, Obsidian, and many others. She teaches creative writing at the Alabama School of Fine Arts and in the low residency MFA at Converse College. Jones co-directs Penn Birmingham, and she's the founding director of the Magic City Poetry Festival. And she recently served as a guest editor for Poetry Magazine. I'm really excited and honored to welcome Ashley M. Jones to Common Sense tonight. Ashley.
Thank you, Jordan. And thank you, Izzy. I am excited to read for y'all tonight. I have 5 poems. I always give the number just so people can count down if they should need to do that. So there will be 5 poems. And I wanted to start with a couple of poems from my second book, Dark Thing. This one is sort of Valentine's Day themed. I don't really do Valentine's Day for real, but I figure the poems can do it, perhaps, even if I don't. So this poem is about one of the husbands in my head, and I have a list. Somebody can ask about it. I don't know if I'll answer or not, but someone can ask later what that, who is on that list. But I have this list of men, and most of them are characters or people who have passed on, honestly, who are my husbands in my imaginary life. And one of them is Dwayne Wayne from A Different World. Hopefully everybody has seen that. Sometimes when I read with younger audiences, people look at me like I'm an alien for saying something like A Different World. But he was and is one of my hugest crushes. And so this poem is an ode to him. Ode to Dwayne Wayne, or I want to be Whitley Gilbert when I grow up. Was it her impossible waist that made you love her? Or the shrill Southern dagger of her voice slicing air? The way she made your name a war cry, a mating call, a bleat. Maybe the thick, wet hair she pulled into a ponytail, or the way her slew feet suggested ballet. Whatever it was that made you turn your glasses up and open your nostrils wide, whatever it was, I have chased it my whole life. I got a jerry curl at 17, lost all my baby weight at 20, even tried a Southern accent when no one I knew was around. I pursued men who wore your scent, mathematicians, engineers, chemists, men with really fly sneakers. But none of them were you. None could send me swooning, wishing I were high yellow, Southern tongued enough to catch your eye and make you plead, baby, 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 please. So yeah, if you haven't seen A Different World, I suggest you watch it. I think it's streaming everywhere. But that last bit is from the wedding scene. I'm not going to ruin it if you haven't seen it yet, but baby, 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 please is like famous, infamous, perhaps. So moving on, still in Dark Thing, I want to read a poem that I wrote in frustration. A lot of poems are written out of frustration, especially those that are about America, because y'all know how it is. So this poem I wrote in 2017, so it was after the 2016 election, and I was really just getting frustrated with everything. And I think this poem probably still holds true, or maybe definitely still holds true. And it's actually a golden shovel variation, which for this one, I just use the end words of the poem, A Small Needful Fact by Ross Gay, which everyone should hasten to read if you have not. But this poem is called Who Will Survive in America? or 2017, a horror film. All year, I have worked against this feeling, this country, this raging wreck from sea to shining sea. Do you know what it means to wake each morning, to realize your own brown hands aren't enough to protect you? That the likelihood of any given day being your last one on Earth is too high? That we are more likely to find life on Mars than to ever actually fix that fatal likelihood? That we will probably just continue with our meaningless Starbucks orders, fill the house with Nina Simone and call that woke, value furry collared creatures over our own human kin? Sometimes seems like they can smell our otherness. Seems like we sparkle with something fiery in the sunlight, but not even our spectacular crystalline glitter makes it easier for them to believe that we have any inalienable right to breathe. All right, we are moving to Reparations Now, which is, as Jordan said, my newest book. And I want to read a poem that I also wrote out of frustration, actually. And I think it maybe can speak to the CRT debate. I won't go too into it because I am an educator and everybody's always watching and listening. So, I have feelings about it. And I think all you have to do is read my poems to really understand how I feel. But this poem was written a few years ago when I was invited to do an author talk. I was actually doing a favor for a colleague of mine. She was going to do the author talk at a local school, but she couldn't do it. So she asked me to fill in. I happily agreed, sent my info to the organizer. She seemed really excited that I was going to fill in. And then maybe 10 minutes after I sent her my website, she emailed back to say, this isn't going to work because of content. I really don't know what content meant, honestly. For one, I don't think she knew what race I was. And for two, I guess because I write about history quite openly and I write the truth, perhaps she thought that was too much for her students. But I got really upset because I am an educator. That's my job. So she didn't really give me the benefit of the doubt that I could read something that was appropriate for her students. So I wanted to write a really strongly worded email, we'll say it that way, back to this woman. But instead, I deleted what I had written to her in reply, and I wrote this poem instead. And this poem is an attempt to be totally non-political. It's a Shakespearean sonnet until it isn't. And I think you'll be able to figure out when it isn't. Poem in which I am too political to read at your school. A rose, single, silent and soft, opens. Red petals, tender, innocent, fragrant. What beauty, how holy. Peace unbroken in the rose's solid stem. O ancient wonder, rose of unsullied joy, I sing to the majesty of your sun-loved face, your color so pure, petal fine as wing. Leaf's thin veins, a natural puzzle of lace. Even your thorns are worthy of my praise. They're spikes, but soldiers keeping you from harm. A stab could set my fingers all ablaze, but still your grace would silence all. Except the rose was black and you killed it. Black and you silenced it. Black and you raped it. Black and it could not vote. Black and it got in the wrong garden. So you had to use pesticide, had to poison its water, and all the little black rose babies had to stop teaching it to read. It was black. So you pulled it up by the roots with a knife shaped just like America, just like the government, just like white Jesus, just like your mouth leaking, bless your heart. You severed its roots and you chewed them whole, and you smiled as it withered, searching for home. So yeah, not political, totally non-political poem. I think I succeeded. She would have loved that one if I had gone to her school. So staying on a political note, which is a note I'm often on, I'm going to read a poem that came out of AWP. It's AWP season. And if you're a writer, I guess most of you already know the mania that is AWP. I don't love AWP, but we're not here for my dissertation on AWP and its sometimes futility. But this poem was written, and I know my camera's like doing weird stuff with the light, ignore, as long as you can see me, we're good. But I wrote this poem right after the Portland AWP. And at this time I had been touring with Dark Thing, and it seemed like everywhere I went for like maybe 3 months straight, every single place I went, some weird racist thing happened. And so there was like this moment of just increased frustration for me with all these racist encounters. And so the sort of straw that broke the camel's back was something that was said to me at a house party at AWP in Portland. And I just had to write about it. I find the earring that broke loose from my ear the night a white woman told me the world would always save her. I remember that earring made me feel so free, so full of beauty, the kind that you might notice, beauty that could make my shoulders glow. I remember her face, alight with a devious curiosity in the porch light of the house party, that party in that city which slathered a film over its racism with clean streets and yard signs proclaiming inclusion. That city in that American state which legally excluded Black residents in 1844, which entered the Union big, proud, and white. Does it matter that this woman was not evil, did not send bombs to kill children in a far-off country, did not buy or sell a single slave? Picking up the earring, unwearable until I find another hook on which to hang it from my ear, I remember again the words and their cool sting. I'm a white woman. People protect us. Does it matter what I said to invite these words? Does it matter that I did not invite these words? Does it matter that she thought this was a joke, a sign that she was on the right side, a way to pass a moment under the porch light? I've been thinking about intention lately, how I'm always asked to consider how good a person is, what they meant versus what they said. I think about the man who called me colored at a hotel in 2019. I think about the N-word out of a white person's mouth, about erasure. I wonder about the road to hell, which they say is paved in these same intentions, good. George Zimmerman intended to protect his sidewalk from Trayvon's body, invasively alive. George Washington intended to protect America from Britain's oppression. Never mind those oppressed Black bodies. Yes, I am weaving a rope between George Zimmerman and George Washington. Yes, I am saying it. My country 'tis of thee, sweet land of white supremacy. When she said it, my face could barely twist into anything but fatigue. I am tired over and again of being told I am not human enough to matter. The white poet rages against me on Facebook. Maybe he imagines my blood against his ivory tower. Maybe he imagines the many bricks my foremothers and fathers built. Lucille, Phyllis, Gwendolyn, Paul Lawrence, Langston, Sonia, Maya, Nikki, tumbling at the flick of his well-educated thumb. Is even my degree a different color, relegated to the back of a bus, a book? The business of poetry so thick with privilege, so smothered in the rust of its old gates. How can you breathe among all that rot? On the news, the man they call president tells us to go back from where we came. I think of all the lost ones thrown over boats, the ones locked away in cages, the ones here, sitting as American as the day is long and still called wrong. The earring says, I once was lost when I find it, tells me it can be repaired. It is an earring of the struggle. It wants that ear it once called home. It wants to touch my brown skin and reflect it in its orbiting gold. I look for my pliers, my jewelry kit. The work is always the thing that makes us whole again. So the last poem that I'm going to read is a poem of affirmation. And this one also was written a little bit as a reaction. As a Black woman living in America, I have experienced this really weird thing where there's always conditions put on my lovability or my worthiness. So people will say things like, oh, you're very articulate, meaning you're articulate for a Black person, or, oh, you're so pretty, in this surprised voice. Like that one is always really interesting. And I still get that one to this day. Like it's some sort of miracle that somehow I'm beautiful despite my Blackness. There's a lot of stuff that people say. So this poem I wrote for me, but also for any other Black girl, Black woman, person of color who feels like their very existence is constantly criticized. And just to reaffirm and to affirm for all of us that we are all worthy of love already. We don't have to do anything. We don't have to change anything about ourselves for that to be true. So this poem is called, It is Entirely Possible for a Black Girl to Be Loved. See me, Black as I am, and call me beautiful. No revolution necessary, no brave needed, just loving me. It is not unusual to love me, Black as I am. It is not because I'm so strong, so exotic, so walk on the wild side. What side? See my skin. It's not chocolate or coffee or caramel. It is inedible. It is nothing to see with colonizers' eyes, nothing to trap with pity or praise, nothing to bruise, to make purple with your power. My skin is soft like anything soft. It is a reflection of God. It is a heavenly mirror. Don't you see that? You're there too. Black as I am, I can shine anything back. Even the sun wants to cling to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashley. It was really wonderful to hear those poems. That's something that I know I always ask my students to do, hear your work. And we don't get to experience that, with the books that we have in our hands. And so it's wonderful to have you here and outside of that book, and also, so much a part of it. So thank you so much. I know I have questions. I don't see any in the chat yet. And let me go ahead and allow for Izzy. Let me spotlight here. Let's see if I can add some spotlights. There we are. Okay. So let me start off with something that I think both of you did in various ways. And that's the idea of testifying or testimony. And I think about this a lot in writing. When you come from something that is significantly personal, significantly true, significantly experienced, how do you navigate that into the finished state of a poem? Like you said, Ashley, you said you had an email and you had this email, and I've done that so many times where I'll just, type something out. Now I can't send that. And then I'll turn it into something else. hopefully, because otherwise it'll eat me. So how do you take that testimony and bring it into that finished state of a poem? And yeah, that's my first question. If you choose to answer it, you don't have to, but that's something that I thought about. So, Ashley, do you want to go first, and then Izzy, if you want to?
Sure. Yeah, I think for me, getting from the experience to the poem has a lot to do with listening. So for example, with the poem that you just referenced, where I was ready to go off on this lady, and like I was ready to go off, like I can't really express to you in words how ready I really was to go off on this lady. But I had to kind of step back and hear myself saying, this is not how we resolve this problem. And also hear myself saying, there's maybe something you want to do on the page with this. So yeah, it just takes a lot of like knowing yourself. And then as far as the technical part, that also for me involves listening to the poem and letting it tell me what it needs to be. So again, in the case of that sonnet, I knew that I wanted to write a poem that would be unquestionably, artistic to people who believe that politics don't have a place anywhere. So I chose the sonnet, which is time honored, and everybody on whatever side of politics, who loves poetry, they will say, yes, a sonnet, that's a real poem. So I said, cool, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to write about a rose. A rose is something everybody loves. And I wanted to make that opening, or that sonnet part, just so, I don't know, like so praise like for this thing that's seemingly so non-political. And I knew that I wanted to, with that last couplet, as sonnets often do with the volta, I wanted to turn the knife, take the knife out, stab, and then turn. So that's what I did. I let the poem explode in that way. But it's different for every poem. But again, it really has to do with me just listening to the poem. And I also, not to get super woo-woo on y'all, but I'm a poet. I believe that this thing called the spirit, you can call it God, whatever you want to call the thing, the muse, whatever, that's what kind of lets me know, here's the poem, here's how you need to do it. So I do have to be silent and listen to that as well. So yeah, there's my answer.
Yeah, I think that's something that I know that I emphasize too, listening to the poem itself and letting that guide you to some degree. Izzy, any thoughts on that? The notion of, moving, how do you transfer the autobiographical into a state of the poem where maybe it's something added to the autobiographical, or a dimension perhaps that the poem adds to the autobiographical?
Yeah, I think that it's hard. I feel like this, every time I write something, my answer to this kind of changes, because I do think about this a lot, but I think I'm really interested in writing persona poetry. So I think that when I'm writing, I'm not trying to think about what happened or something that's autobiographical, more just focusing on the character or the voice. And I think that sometimes it just happens. Yeah, I have a very hard time answering this question. But I think oftentimes, like, I'll write a poem about a potato and someone will like say something in a workshop and it will make me realize that it's about something. But I guess more autobiographical poems. Sorry, I'm like, I don't.
No, I know it's something that I don't tend to go into with that intention. It's something like I could be writing about a potato and suddenly I'm writing about the death of my father. Suddenly I'm writing about, what it is to be a father. Suddenly, it's that kind of turn into it that draws me in. And the other thing that I had to ask you all about was like this notion of metaphor. It's something that I'm always talking to students about, because I think sometimes there's this quick leap of metaphor, or metaphor is supposed to, when we speak, metaphor should transfer very quickly. It's this mode of economy. Like, I want you to understand what I'm saying right now, and let's move on so we can get a sandwich. But I got the sense that you both use metaphor quite differently than that. That metaphor for you is something that is that's maybe in a state of development, or it's not the end of the conversation. I want to know about that too. Like, how do you view metaphors in your poems? Yeah, Ashley.
Well, I was formulating an answer before you called my name, so we're gonna just make it work. um, yeah, I definitely think metaphor plays a lot of different roles in my work. The thing that I was thinking about when you asked the question, though, was um, even though one of the poems I read has a pretty extended metaphor of the rose, a lot of times my goal is to communicate something clearly. So if you finish my poem and you have no idea what I'm talking about, I have failed. For me, like, that's my goal, is to say something to someone or to myself sometimes. So metaphors are helpful, but I definitely never want the metaphor to overshadow my work. And sometimes I don't even have capacity for metaphor. There's a poem that I wrote about seeing a Black man on a street corner, and it was maybe like a week after Alton Sterling had been murdered by the police. And there's a line in that poem that says, "I can't reach for metaphors today. A metaphor is a luxury I can't afford," or something. I'm paraphrasing myself, and I'm not going to blame myself for messing up my own line. But yeah, sometimes there's just no room, and that's something I learned from poets who I admire so well. Sometimes you have to just say something. The metaphor is, hiding what you're really trying to say. So I don't know. I use them, but also I don't sometimes.
Yeah, no, I like that. No capacity for it. That there has to be this directness and this immediacy, because otherwise you would be perhaps hiding behind that, or you would be, creating a distance that shouldn't be there. Yeah, that makes total sense, for sure. Izzy, because the hammer poem again, I felt like that was just building out with all these, branching and branching and branching. Um, and I'm wondering, how much control did you feel like you had in that situation?
Oh, I I don't know. I mean, this now I'm sort of changing my answer to the first one, but I think I really liked what Ashley said about hiding. I think that I feel like often I kind of get in my head about writing the same thing about a certain thing. So I feel like, to me, metaphor is kind of, again, I start out hiding from it, but eventually it just kind of breaks into the thing I want to say. And I almost feel like I need that in order to say the thing that I want to say. Um, but yeah, I don't know how much control that I feel like I have. I wrote that like in a time crunch, the hammer poem, to be honest. And I think, yeah, it just felt like I was hammering my head in a sense, but I don't, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it felt like an emptying. It was just emptying and emptying, and spilling forth. Um, I've got another question too. I don't see any in the chat, but I've got a question about forms. Izzy used a lipogram, um, and Ashley used the golden shovel. And so for you explain lipogram. For those of you who don't know what a golden shovel is, Terrence Hayes used Gwendolyn Brooks's poem, "We Real Cool," and used the N words of that poem, or the words in that poem, to form the N words in his poem. And it can be any poem you choose for a golden shovel. It can be any poem that you really adore, and you use the words from the poem as your ending words. So forms seem very important to you both. And I know they're important to me too. I use them for certain times, certain reasons. Sometimes it's because I'm stuck and I need to get away from myself enough, and that's a constraint. But I'm wondering how you utilize forms, and um, how do you avoid the con- the, cons- the construct of a form becoming restrictive? I guess it's a two-part question. You can answer one half or all of it, but how do you avoid it kind of closing in, like Star Wars, where the walls come in, and or how do you use it to generate or motivate something refreshing or surprising in your writing. I mean, can we reverse this time? Izzy, you want to answer, and then we'll come back to Ashley.
Yeah, I feel, or yeah, I think that the more restricted, the better for me. And I think that usually, right, you're saying the Star Wars walls are coming in. I think that's usually how, when I want to write, when I'm excited to write, that's just how I feel in general. And so I think that I'm really interested in lipograms and anagrams and things like that, mainly because I feel like it's a challenge. Like how, sometimes I think like I'm just trying to communicate the same three things through multiple poems, and how can I try to actually say the thing that I want to say, but I feel like I can't. So I think that for me, the word constraints kind of put pressure on the persona, or the speaker of the poem, and force that thing out. Just some other word constraints that I think people should try, is there's this writer named Susan Holbrook, and she has a book called Throaty Wipes, which is an anagram for what is poetry. And she has a poem that's written on, if you turned a calculator upside down using only of the words like that you could form with that. And yeah, just trying to challenge yourself in doing something that seems stupid or silly and making it smart, or just, just making it something that's meaningful to you.
Thank you. Ashley.
Yeah, I gonna give an interesting answer. So y'all don't know me already, but I really love fashion and dressing up every day. And so I kind of see poems as able to be dressed as well. And that's where form comes in. Every poem needs its own outfit, its own coat, whatever, to face the weather outside or to face the occasion, what have you. So just like I explained, that sonnet that I wrote, it needed that particular armor or that particular dressing. But also, again, it has to do with listening to what the poem needs. So that poem that I read about the woman at AWP, there was so much to say. I had so much built up inside me. And so that poem is just a prose block. It's a block of text. It could not be a sonnet. It could not be a haiku. It could not be a pantoum. Nothing should ever be a pantoum for me. Those are so hard. Like, oh, the pantoum. But I just knew the poem needed to be in prose, and I wanted to give myself that freedom. I used to hate form, actually. When I was in art school as a teen, I would just like rail against form all the time, because I would say this is so archaic. We can't say anything in these poems. This is all by dead white guys, the whole nine. And when I got into grad school, I took a poetics class with Campbell McGrath, who is, as we know, a genius. And he kind of opened a door for me. And then I started reading forms by Black women poets, or poets of color, or women in general, and alive people in general. That was actually really important for me, to read form written by contemporary poets, just to understand that it was just another thing I could use. I didn't have to let the poem write me. Just because I was writing a sonnet, I didn't have to be like worshiping Shakespeare. No shade to Shakespeare. Hope he's living well in the beyond. But I didn't have to be constrained by that. And you can also break these forms. I think Gwendolyn Brooks teaches me that constantly. Some of her earlier poems are not exactly perfect forms, but they're near forms, and that's all right. The poem is still successful. There are no poetry police, hopefully there never will be, who will come, stab you in the night if you have 11 syllables instead of 10, So that's how I see form. It's something I love now, and I never thought that I would, actually. Some people even call me a formalist, which I don't know about all that, but it is what it is. I write in form.
It looks like we have a question in the chat. I was wondering about, and this is from Miranda to you all. I was wondering about, in the process of writing, what you as poets think about repeating emblems, dealing with a return to the same affinities. Do you let them captivate you constantly? What's the benefit of you getting away from them. And I wonder if this has to do with, something that you said, Izzy, where you feel like you're writing the same poem over and over and over again, and how you feel like you're kind of returning to the same, either the scene of the crime, or you're returning to the same memory, or returning to the same symbol, or something like that. Um, you know, I mean, I know there's been times I've written things where it's like that's just the book. The book is that over, and it's like a serial, poem where I'm going back, and I'm going back into the cave and seeing what I can bring back out. But yeah, I think that's a great question. When you have to deal with certain either obsessions, or you have to deal with certain things that are just there, that haven't gone away yet, that are still very much part of your present. So how do you engage with that thing, or those things that are just, they're there, they seem like that they're rooted. um, and I won't put someone on the spot, whoever wants to jump in and um, say something about that.
Sure. I think I have two answers to this question. One answer is that I'm an artist. So of course I'm obsessed with the same five things, and I will be for my entire life. That's just the way that it is for all of us who make art. You're going to keep saying the same thing. Like, I know I have the word blood in like almost all my poems. They're always the same, like groupings of words. Even if the words are new, somehow they're still saying the same thing, because again, that's just how it works. The other answer is that there are some themes and topics that recur in my work. Um, and, some of them deal with the oppression of Black people in America. I'm certainly tired of writing about that. I wish that I did not have to write about that. And someone might say, well, you don't have to. Well, I mean, it's a part of my life. There's not a day that goes by that something doesn't happen, and everybody who's Black, at least, I can't speak for everybody, but that is true. There's something every single day. And so until, people can sleep in their homes at night and not be killed, or walk down a street and not be harassed, until that's true, I'm going to keep writing these poems. They have to be written. I mean, so I guess I deal with it by just accepting, as a poet, it is my responsibility to, at least I feel it's my responsibility to be a mirror to my society and to keep telling the truth. So if that means I have to write the same poem 75,000 times, so be it. And then also to the first answer, surrendering again to the fact that I'm a human being who can only contain so much in my mind. That's not to say that all my poems are the same. Please do buy all three of my books and see the different poems that are in there. But yeah, there's going to be some recurring themes no matter what.
Thank you, Ashley.
Yeah, I think that once I had someone tell me that the best writing advice they've ever received was, so I guess if you're writing a poem about an ocean, and someone says, oh, you should take the ocean out of it, the revision should not be taking out the ocean, but rewriting it in a way so that nobody could ever make that feedback again. And I think that that's just, as far as obsession goes, I think if you get lost too much in trying to resist that, it's kind of like, what's the point of writing? And you should just, if you want to write like 50 million pages about a dishwasher, go for it. I feel like you're going to find more by listening to that than ignoring it and resisting it and trying to write about something else. And it will probably end up becoming about a dishwasher anyway. So, or whatever it is you're obsessed with. Dishwasher is one of mine. So yeah.
Okay, I'm going to end with this question, and it's a question I've been asking all the poets I've hosted since the pandemic began, and that is, I want you to share with everyone here just one thing that has brought you joy during this pandemic, that you would like to share with others. It could be a song, it could be a film, it could be an artist or an artwork, it could be a practice. For me, I now try to walk 5 miles a day, and that for me has brought me a lot of joy. Just it's kept me sane. If there's something, anything that you could share, a recipe, anything that you could share with everyone else out here that we could take into our lives or bring into our lives to just give us a little joy, that you would be willing to share. So that's something that I just want to end on tonight. And whoever wants to go first, feel free.
One thing that has brought me joy, or at least I've learned to really appreciate this much more during the pandemic, is waking up every morning, like being able to say I'm here still. That has brought me a lot of joy. And that might seem very simple or obvious, but pre-pandemic, I think a lot of us were taking for granted the fact that we are alive every day. So I've just tried, to just enjoy the fact that I'm still here, despite all the terrible things that have happened personally and in the world. But yeah, that's mine.
Absolutely. I agree. The count your blessings thing is something that I definitely feel, especially with all the suffering that's been going on around us. How about you, Izzy? One thing that's brought you joy.
One thing, I have an object that I wanted to show. Not so much of it's not really I can't reverse. Hold on, sorry. This lamp right here, it's one of my roommates made it, and it's just been here throughout the entire pandemic. I don't know if you can see it.
Is that a dog?
Yeah, and there's also a guy, but the lamp and the guy broke. But yeah, that's the dog and the man. And I think it just, I think it's just exciting to live with people that are making art and making lamps like that. And it just made me happy in the pandemic, being at home, seeing a dog that's lights up. Yeah.
It reminds me of the first poem you read.
Yeah, see,
actually.
the obsession thing.
There it is. Yeah. No, that's wonderful. I want to thank you both again for spending your evening with me and with everyone else here. It's just, that's something that brings me joy. Absolutely, is hearing you all read, especially two poets whose work I respect and who propels me back into writing. When sometimes I don't feel like it. So. Anyway, thank you so much. I appreciate it, and I hope you all continue to find joy in all areas as much as possible. Anyway, thank you everyone for coming tonight, and that's it. Hope to see you back next month for Simone Savannah, who's no longer local. She was around here. I think she's out in Ohio now, and Brandon Shimoda. So have a great night, everybody. Take care. Good night.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much.